Hey everyone, it's Kate here. I wanted to report a quick video about the executive order issued by President Trump yesterday in the afternoon. Most of you probably heard about his tweet. The days all run together at this point, but I think it was Monday. And then there was a press briefing on Tuesday and lots of news articles speculating what might be on the order. And then the order was actually published yesterday, the 22nd, at the end of the day. And so I've had a chance to review it. It's quite short. And I think the overall impact is very small on the immigrant community. There are some people who will be affected, and I'll talk to you about that. But I think, this follows a pattern that we've seen with Trump, where he makes some big splashy announcement that's meant to stir up his base and inflame anti-immigrant sentiment, to vilify immigrants. And then when it comes to, he surprises people, even people in his own administration, that he's doing this. And then when it comes to actually writing out the order, he's more constrained by laws and policies as people are writing the order. And then, of course, we see the implementation. And when he oversteps his boundaries, of course, there have been lots of situations where that has gone into the federal court system, and his policies have been enjoined in many cases, not in all, which is why we see the MPP, or the Remain in Mexico program, going forward. But in any event, this suspension on immigration follows the exact same pattern. Big, splashy, very scary announcement that puts a lot of people on edge. And then the actual order doesn't have quite the teeth that Trump threatened. I think we all see through him. And we all know that on the other sides of these immigrant cases, these green card cases and work visa cases, that there are U.S. citizens who vote. And we're talking about their family members, and we're talking about their employees. And so I know I don't have to tell you guys, but we need to keep all of this in mind, and his attempt to distract us from his failure of leadership during this crisis. So we want to keep all this in mind when it's time to go vote. But I'm probably preaching to the choir if you are watching this video. Anyhow, so let's get to the order. So it just suspends immigrant visa processing at the consulates for the next 60 days. Starting tonight, the 23rd of April at 11:59 p.m., immigrant visa cases are going to be suspended at the U.S. embassies and the consulates abroad. Now, we know that the consulate has already been closed through the COVID crisis, and who knows when it's set to reopen. So I don't know that this actually is going to have a different impact on anyone than they might have already had with the closures. But let's just go through some of the details. So it only applies to people who are outside of the U.S., who have not yet been granted an immigrant visa, and who don't have a visa. So no one in the U.S. will be impacted by this. That means people who are applying for a green card through family or employment, or through a humanitarian case, DACA, VAWA, U visa, T visa, SIJ, citizenship. None of those cases will be impacted by this executive order. And then, so of the people who are outside of the country waiting on an immigrant visa, or let's just say outside of the country, the order does not apply to LPRs, and it doesn't apply to non-immigrant visas, including fiance visas, student visas, work visas. But of course, the embassies are closed to those appointments right now. For immigrant visas, and what that means is it's a permanent, it's an application for a green card, but at the consulate. So people who are exempted from the order are healthcare workers, EB-5 investors, and then spouses of U.S. citizens and minor children of U.S. citizens. What's not listed in here are parents of U.S. citizens, and that will impact at least one of our clients. Because if we're talking about people who are petitioning, a U.S. citizen petitioning for a parent abroad, they are not exempted in this order for an immigrant visa. People who are serving in the armed forces and SIJ cases are exempted. So it might be actually easier to talk about who is impacted by this. This would be people who are applying for immigrant visas through an employment process, like the PERM process, or people who are not immediate relatives of U.S. citizens, or their parents of U.S. citizens, siblings of U.S. citizens, adult children of U.S. citizens, married or unmarried, or any family members of permanent residents. So that would be their spouses or their unmarried children. But what this means is that for the next 60 days, anyone who falls into one of those family-based or employment-based immigrant visa categories is just going to have a suspension on their immigrant visa interview. So it's, in my view, it's just sort of a delay of immigrant visa issuances for the categories that we just talked about. I think even though there aren't a huge number of people impacted by this, and who knows when they're going to open up the embassies anyway, there are people who are affected by this. And it is, a reminder that Trump has been attacking immigrants from the day he took office, and family members of U.S. citizens and permanent residents who are trying to reunify with each other are affected by this order. And so even though it doesn't have that much power, there could be people impacted by it if the embassies open back up, except for these types of cases. And so for people who are in this situation, we just need to be on standby and monitoring it. And some of the things to think about are, if you have a police certificate showing that you don't have a criminal history in your country, that could be expiring. Or you could have a medical report that's expiring. So some of these things will be just logistical hassles to update before you can process through the consulate. So we discussed this order in our team meeting this morning, and we have just a handful of clients who are potentially impacted by this, and we'll be contacting you guys directly. If you don't hear from us directly, should not be impacted by this. But as always, if you have any questions, just call us or text us or message us on Facebook, whatever works best for you. This newsletter is intended for our current clients and for people who are interested in immigration updates. So that's why you're receiving this. And I'll keep giving you updates as we have them. And I hope everyone's staying safe, staying at home. And if you have to venture out for your work, we appreciate you. And we're thinking about you. Take care, everyone.